Vampires. They've been around for centuries. They've been written about through the ages, and today I'll be reviewing a book called To Touch the Sun by Laura Enright. This is a book about a vampire named Narain Khan who works as a chef and a vampire, which could be like, okay, he's a chef, that's interesting. And it takes place in Chicago, and he is in Chicago. There's a restaurant on every corner. There's a lot of restaurants, so you can see why that would be a good choice for him. And he works at night. And then there's also a background of him in World War I and how he became a vampire. And with that in mind, it explains, you know, that that's what he really wanted to do with his life. And then he meets a doctor, and her name is Dr. Cassandra Lambert, and he ends up, their lives intertwine, and they keep meeting, and then she works in this lab, and then she starts coming up with finding out about these vampires and that there could be a cure for vampirism. And so then they keep, like I said, meeting up back and forth, and that leads into a plot. And then there are these feral vampires, and those are the vampires that are not really, they're not really fully developed. They're just feral vampires, so they're dangerous. And that leads up to a more dangerous character, and there's a more dangerous vampire, and we find out about him. And so that's, you know, I don't want to give too much away about that. It all leads up to there are good characters and bad characters, and it ends up being a really interesting ending, very exciting and very interesting to what happens. The main character, Narain, or Rain for short, he is a character that's battling with vampirism as a disease. So it's like an addiction, like if you're an alcoholic, or if you're addicted to pills, or if you're just somebody battling with a disease like cancer or something. So that makes him much more human. When it comes to those teen novels, you can get really lost in those because there's so many characters in them. You're like, who's good, who's bad, who should I root for? You know, this book, it makes it so much more clearer, and it's a more adult, and it's a very good read. And you'll say at the end, well, is there a sequel? And there will be a sequel, and look for it in your local bookstore and your local library, and that'll be coming out very soon. And, you know, look up the author Laura Enright, who she has a web page, and she's on Facebook. And this should be a really good series of novels, like I said, something that you could discuss in an intelligent way with intelligent characters. Even the female character is intelligent, which in a lot of novels, you know, that may be the damsel in distress, but in this, it's very cool and interesting, and it's almost, you know, it has almost an element of sci-fi in it. So it's got that, you know, old-fashioned feeling from those old movies, that black and white movies we used to see growing up, you know, that used to have like a lab and you'd have good and bad people in it, but it still has a modern flair to it, and it's really a good read. So that is my, you know, review of To Touch the Sun, and I hope you enjoyed this Raven review.